This review was made possible by Gamersgate.com. Download games anytime, anywhere. Skip it up and that up. What's going on, everybody? This is Rich of Review Tech USA, and I am here with IamTheAntiMartyr from YouTube. I'll have his link to his channel below down in the description. What's going on, Derek?
How's it going, Rich?
It's going just lovely, and we are here talking about the game that's been the bane of my existence, Borderlands 2. Now, before we get into the review, I've hated this game. I've loved it. I've hated it. I've loved it. I've hated it again. And in the end, I think it's awesome. But in this review, we're going to find out why and find out some of the shortcomings to it. So let's get to it. Okay, so what's interesting about Borderlands 2, and I didn't play 2. Actually, Derek, you played more of Borderlands 1. Is that Borderlands 2, it actually has a story, or it has a better story, and it's more refined. Now, you played Borderlands 1. What did you think of the story in that one?
Well, to be honest with you, the story really didn't hold my interest, but I think a lot of that had to do with the way I played the game. I kind of played it strictly as a first-person shooter, and I didn't make it but halfway through the game before I just quit playing it because I lost interest in it. I just didn't feel it was very fleshed out.
That's what I'm hearing. I mean, I didn't play that much of the first one, but from people that I know, whether it be on YouTube or in the real world, a lot of people who played the first Borderlands said the story was just kind of like shoehorned in there. Like, it just, they're like, okay, we made a game where it's, you know, an RPG and you're going around and you're grinding and collecting treasure and so on and so forth. And let's just throw a story in there to give you a reason to keep going. Whereas in Borderlands 2, which we both know from playing it, the story is very fleshed out. The characters all have like their own unique personalities. The dialogue is awesome, and you find out things about Handsome Jack and the Guardian Angel that are very interesting. It feels the story flows, and every mission you find out a little bit more about the story, and the game is hilarious too.
Right, and they incorporated a lot more side missions into this one, and you do the side missions, and you get to learn about these different little villages and these settlements and what the people are like in it. So I think it really did a much better job of bringing the whole Borderlands universe together, of literally giving you that sense that you know, you are in this huge game world, you know, with varying types of people and places.
Perfect example of that, which you just nailed in the head what I wanted to talk about. We played that mission last night where we were getting Scooter inspiration for
right.
He wanted to write a poem for someone he was interested in, and you just find, and just how, you know, he wrote the poem, you had to go give the poem to a woman that he was interested in, and just how everything just kind of flows together, and you find out backstories about each character. Like, they really thought through every single aspect of the dialogue, the storyline, and it's just, you actually you don't want to just bang out and go through the story, because you'll be missing out on a lot of Pandora.
Right.
And that's what I think they did successfully with Borderlands 2, is that you want to find out more, and there is always something more to find out with the side missions and the main missions of what each character is about. And that's what I think is really cool, is that everything just kind of blends together, and they really thought out the whole plot, whereas in the first one it was just kind of forced in there, and they just gave you a game and said, hey, here's a story that we're trying to throw in, and hopefully you want to pay attention to it. And most people didn't, and a lot of people did not like the ending of the first one too, so that kind of hurt it too. But storyline, the story of Borderlands 2 is awesome, and I think Derek agrees with that as well. Absolutely,
and I think the side missions add a lot of substance.
I totally agree with that. So the story of Borderlands 2 kicks ass. So Borderlands 2 is an RPG. I don't care what people see on screen. It may look like a first-person shooter. It may smell like a first-person shooter, but it actually has more in common with Diablo than it does a Call of Duty. Yes, you're in a first-person perspective and you're holding a weapon, but you know, you're grinding for treasure, for money, for new weapons. You're customizing your character. You may go into a certain area of Pandora where you need to have a weapon that sets enemies on fire or shocks enemies. You can't just use the same gun from beginning to end like you could a linear first-person shooter. It is an RPG at its core, and it's going to require thought, and it's going to require grinding. Now I'm actually going to hand this over to Derek. He could go more into detail about the RPG elements of Borderlands 2.
This is true. Borderlands 2 is more of an RPG than it is a first-person shooter. Just think of it as an RPG with first-person shooter mechanics. It's designed to be played cooperatively. You can play through Borderlands 2 solo. If you plan on doing that, make sure you do all the side missions so that you know that you're at the rank that you need to be at in order to compete against the boss at the end of the level. So, if you're a fraghead that likes the traditional first-person shooters where you get to use the same gun throughout the entire game and not really have to think about it very much, this might not be the game for you. If you're a statistics person, Borderlands 2 is an awesome RPG first-person shooter mix. Now, no matter which class you pick in Borderlands 2, you're going to have a skill tree, which consists of 3 separate skill trees. You can decide you're going to focus all of your skill points on one particular skill tree so that you can unlock certain things on that skill tree, or you can do like I do, which is kind of spread out your skill points among the 3. I mean, I plan on maxing out the characters that I have all the way. I want to unlock everything on all those skill trees. This game has been able to keep my attention enough that I actually feel I can do that with Borderlands 2. But the best way to play Borderlands 2 is cooperatively. I mean, the more the merrier. There's 4 classes in the game. Being that there's 4 classes, the idea is that you have one in each class. If you can get a group together like that in this game, you can always make your game public so other people can join. But playing it with other people is definitely the way to go because each class brings certain skill sets to the game that can be very beneficial, particularly when you're going up against those big bad bosses at the end of the level.
Oh yeah, especially, you get the badass loaders that no matter what weapon you have, it barely takes anything off their health.
That's true.
Or like for example, one of the things too is like two characters I'm playing through right now is with the assassin and the commando. The assassin, and they all each character has like a very specific strength. Like the commando is where you can actually throw out a turret. Now, if you're playing solo, which I don't recommend playing this game through single player, that turret becomes your right-hand man. When I played it, which unfortunately I played a ton of single player with this game before I went into playing multiplayer with Derek and just online in general, that saves your ass a lot, that turret. You could throw it out, especially when you power up, you could throw it as far as you want to. You could distract enemies. It'll keep enemies occupied while you're trying to recharge your health because it's you can be a delicate flower in this game, and sometimes a couple bullets can drain all your shield and energy. And that's the turret is a great thing if you're a commando. The assassin has a very cool skill where he can make a decoy and he becomes invisible. And Derek loves this too, where you become invisible, you have a decoy, all the enemies are trying to attack the decoy. You could go behind someone and melee him and assassinate them, hence assassin. So those are things like each character has a very specific strength, and that's what it isn't just a different, you have 4 different characters that just look different. You have 4 different characters that have different attributes that are beneficial, especially when you're playing cooperatively.
Well, another great thing about Borderlands 2 is the guns. When they say that there's a bazillion different guns in the game, they mean it. And when you find drops along the way, they come color-coded. There's blues, purples, greens, oranges. Good thing to look at is the value of the weapon. Another thing to look at is a lot of people want to look at that initial damage that the gun does. That is not always the deciding factor on how powerful that weapon is. So don't discredit a submachine gun just because it only does 64 damage, because if it also does corrosive damage and it does 167 corrosive damage per second, you know that round that you put into that bad guy is going to have that residual effect, and it is going to keep damaging that enemy. So make sure you look at the stats on your guns, and don't underestimate some of the smaller guns in this game, because they do a lot of other different types of damage.
Especially the pistols that explode when they hit the enemies. And the reason Derek is bringing that up is not to give you a tutorial with this, is that is one of the key elements of Borderlands 2, is different weapons at different areas have different strengths and different weaknesses, and the game is very customizable. For example, you have this kind of form of currency called Uridium, and you could go to Sanctuary and pick up things to make your backpack. You could store more things in your backpack. You could you could use iridium to buy it. You could store more grenades. Grenades is another thing that's you could have grenades that, implode and suck enemies into their grenade and damage them. You have grenades that you lob and throw and they bounce around like a grasshopper. And then when they hit an enemy, they have like a spinning spiral of fire that hurts them. You have grenades that you throw and the grenade splits into little grenades and they all explode. The key to this game is customization. And the reason we're bringing it up is if you love to customize your characters and make them exactly what you want them to be, this is the game for you. If you're looking once again to go through as a first-person shooter blindly and pretend you're John Rambo with a bandana on, Borderlands 2 is not for you, and that's why we're bringing up all these details.
And the great thing about Borderlands 2 is that given all of the guns, all of the class mods that you can find along the way, all of the different things that you can do with your character, I mean, the possibilities are endless. The variations are endless. You can come across another rank 29 commando, and his character can be completely different from yours. It's really awesome.
Look at my character last night. I was ahead in terms of my class or my level. I was like 26 and you were 19. And you actually were stronger than me in certain aspects than I was. And that's, once again, the beauty or the shortcoming of Borderlands 2, depending on what kind of gamer you are. So keep that in mind when you pick up a copy of Borderlands 2.
That's right. It's a 100% user-defined experience. Well, we've talked so much about Borderlands 2 being a cooperative RPG, but the first-person shooter mechanics in this game are also very intact. Some people might not think so from their first impression, but that may have to do with the stats of the particular weapon, the accuracy, the sway of the weapon. All of those things factor into play in Borderlands 2. And like Rich and I have been saying, cooperatively is the way to go, because if you play this game by yourself, you're going to come up against some bosses that are going to take you 20 minutes to kill.
Literally.
And but when you play cooperatively, each character class brings something to the table that's really unique. I play the assassin class a lot. I really like it because I think the assassin makes one of the best medics in the game. The reason being is one of your teammates can go down and need to be revived. As the assassin, I can throw out my decoy. I can get the enemy's attention on that instead of on me and my down teammate, which gives me time to revive my teammate.
I think the other thing, too, that people need to realize about the gameplay is that this game was designed, or Borderlands 2, I should say, was designed to be a cooperative game. You can play through it single player, which I did for a ton of it, and it was pretty painful, but it's designed to be cooperative, to play with 4 different people. Now, if you're not a cooperative guy or girl, this game isn't for you, because I'll tell you right now, you're not going through this like Call of Duty and thinking that you're John Rambo and going to take everyone down with one shot, especially further on in the game. I don't care how powerful your weapons are or how strong your shield is. There's some enemies that are still going to be able to take you down with 4 shots or a couple shots.
And I get really tired. I get really tired of having to revive you one-man army guys. So please,
he was mentioning that he had to do that with a couple people the other day.
Yep.
It's a game where you're gonna, and that I think is one shortcoming I can mention. If you're not playing with 4 people that I've had this happen a lot. Is people kind of want to do their own thing, or even if they're playing cooperatively and playing the way you should, it's like, no, I want to do this mission, I want to do that. 2 different things I could say, and I didn't mention them previously. With Borderlands 2, when you're playing online, it is peer-to-peer servers, meaning that if someone leaves the game, if the guy who's the host leaves the game, you're all kicked out. And you didn't get to a point where you could save, then you may lose out on some of your progress, which happened to me once, and I wanted to chew on my controller and throw it out the window. Another thing, I guess this kind of fits in the gameplay too, is when you're looking on the map, when you're looking for part of your mission, or you're looking to complete a part of the mission, you'll have a diamond that points for you where to go. Okay, that's been done in a billion different games before. My problem with it is it's an RPG. When you look on the map, there's part of the maps that you haven't been there yet that are grayed out. So if you haven't been there yet, you're supposed to get there because that's where the part of the mission you need to complete is. you may be totally lost and have no way to get there. The fast travel system won't get you there because it's just, you have to go find Claptrap. That's part of the mission. That's not going to get you there. So you may be totally lost. There was one time, and it was annoying because the save system didn't work properly. That's another beef I have with this game. I died, and I was like probably inches away from getting to the part of the mission that I needed to complete. And it started me way back. And because the map was grayed out, I could not find. It took me an hour to find that, literally over an hour to find that specific part of the mission I needed to complete. That's another shortcoming to Borderlands 2.
Well, that is a traditional RPG mechanic, though. You have to map the maps, like the undiscovered areas. You have to map them out before it all shows up on your map. But once you've been through each one and you go back and you've already mapped it, all of the map is going to be available to you.
Okay. I still feel, I know you're more into RPGs where we disagree. I still feel if you're going to put the damn marker there and you're going to give me a way to get there, because to me it's not. I understand that's how RPGs are. It's discovery, but if you're going to why even give me the marker then? That's how I feel, but that's just me. But beyond that, there is a lot of fun to be had with Borderlands 2, but remember, it's not all if you think that every enemy is only going to take 1 or 2 bullets like it's Call of Duty or you're playing Crysis 2, you got another thing coming. This is a game that requires a lot of time investment. I don't want to say effort because, then what's the point of a video game if it's not fun? It requires a big time investment, and it requires you to play cooperatively. And I do suggest, and I'm sure Derek will agree with me on this, that try to find at least a couple friends, that people that that won't be jackasses when you play with them online, because that was
absolutely.
Yeah.
And if you plan on having a game online that you're going to play with randoms, make sure that you're the host of the game. That way you determine when the game starts and when the game ends, instead of joining somebody else's game, getting all the way to the mission, and then having them quit the game.
Yeah. Please do that, because then you'll want to punch your computer screen like me. So has some shortcomings, but the gameplay is a lot of fun. Again, just don't expect it. I know I sound like a broken record. Don't expect it to be like every other first-person shooter. So presentation. Actually, I'm going to have Derek start this one off, and then I'll give my 2 cents on it. Derek, what do you think about the presentation, the overall feel of Borderlands 2?
Well, personally, I like the way it looks aesthetically. Although I do know certain people that will not play it because they don't like the way it looks. They don't like the cell shading. They don't like the fact that it kind of looks like a cartoon or a comic book. To me, it looks like a very graphic comic book, particularly when you get to meet some of the characters in this game and their personalities and their sick, twisted sense of humor. It's definitely more of an Adult Swim type experience than it is a Saturday morning cartoon experience. So, if some of you guys out there, you're turned off by the bright colors and the funky looking guns, I assure you that there's enough sick, twisted humor in this game to definitely do it for you. But personally, I think that the game looks beautiful. I'd like to see more games done in this cel-shaded art style. I think a Jedi game done with this type of game engine and this art style would be absolutely phenomenal. But I really like the look of Borderlands 2.
I love the cell shading. In terms of technical aspects, the only thing I could say, and other people have noted it too, is that textures kind of not pop in, but they'll kind of just like you'll open up a chest and it'll look like a Nintendo 64 texture, and then all of a sudden the texture will sharpen up and oh yeah, those are shotgun shells. Or sometimes you'll run up to a texture close. It's not as bad as like Rage was on the PC or PS3, but you'll move quick and run up to a wall and the textures will kind of come in as you're going up to it. So there is texture popping, but that's technical. It's not horrible. It's nowhere near as bad as Rage was. I don't know if Derek, if you played Rage, but especially I played it on the PS3, and it was.
I have not.
Everything would just pop up right for you. It would be like no texture, then texture, no texture, then texture. If you guys out there, I think it's been resolved somewhat, but if you guys played Rage, you know what I'm talking about. But there is that. But the worlds are very varied and beautiful in Borderlands 2. The colors, they really. From what I've played of Borderlands 1, it wasn't as diverse. In Borderlands 2, every area you go to feels totally different. So you'll have a bunch of eye candy, and I personally enjoy the cell shading like Derek does. and I think it adds to the game. Also, I love the soundtrack of Borderlands 2. Some parts it has like a spaghetti western feel. Then when you're in a huge battle, to go into like kind of a techno music, or it's just very interesting, the blend of, you know, the soundtrack, the soundtrack and how they blended it with the gameplay is great. I think they did a phenomenal job. Gearbox did a great job with the music of Borderlands 2. All in all, if you're looking for a change of pace from the turd brown first person shooters out there, Borderlands 2 will definitely be your cup of tea. So, final verdict time. Derek, what do you think of Borderlands 2?
I think Borderlands 2 is great. I think whether you're a hardcore gamer or you're a casual gamer, Borderlands 2 has a lot to offer. If you are the casual gamer, it is probably going to take you a really, really long time to play through this game. But, you know, that's the great part about it. There's so much content in this game. There's so much to do, and it holds your attention long enough. You never get the feeling with Borderlands, whether you paid the full retail price for it or whether you got it on sale. I don't know anybody who's played it for more than 15 to 20 hours who would say they didn't feel they got their money's worth out of it. So I really like this game, and I recommend it.
Same here, but I'm going to give two final verdicts. I'm going to make sure it doesn't last for 20 minutes. It is an incredible game that has a ton of different content, and if you like playing cooperatively, absolutely this game is the game for you. Remember, it's an RPG. On the flip side, and I've seen a lot of people on YouTube, you know, really give this game a huge thumbs down because I just don't think they understand it. Just because you're seeing a first-person shooter when you look at videos on YouTube or when you see advertisements on TV, it's a first-person shooter in the loosest term. It's really an RPG that you're...
Class-based RPG.
It's a class-based RPG that just so happens to have you behind the gun. So if you're looking for a very, you know, laid-back... I hate to keep bringing it up, but it's true. Call of Duty or Battlefield 3 experience. This is not for you, and this game wasn't meant to be for you, so you can't really hold it against Borderlands 2 because you don't like that style of gameplay. So if you are into a really deep, you know, RPG experience, run out and get this game now. If you're just looking for something where you can run and gun, Borderlands 2 is not for you, and that is my final take on this game.